Hello folks, this is my SJ320 that I bought more than a year ago and has undergone a fairly extensive refit, and for the last season I have been racing it solo here, there and everywhere. I've probably put about 1,500 miles on it now, which has been great for getting to grips with the boat, but there has been one very big Achilles heel that I have had ever since I've had this boat. It's this thing here. This is the better of the two mainsails that came with the boat, but it is still a 20-year-old mainsail and it has been slowly falling apart over the last year. The more miles I put on the boat, the more problems I have had. So it now has patches on top of patches on top of patches. And the last time I took this sail into my friendly sailmaker, he did say, "George, you really do need to be careful now. If there's more than 15 knots of breeze, I would seriously think twice about taking it out, because it is just going to go fall apart, and that will be the end of that." But I have a solution to that with the application of money and some very nice people that I know. I have something in this bag that's going to be far, far better than what I've got here. So follow along on this episode when I swap out this very old sail for this very shiny new one. If you haven't seen the channel before, my name's George, the Solent Boat Butler. I refit and repair boats for a living, and that's largely what I show on this channel. It's mostly client boats, but I have also shown the purchase, the restoration, the refit and the racing on my SJ320, which has been a really, really fun project, both in terms of the boat works and in terms of the sailing. I've done a fair amount of solo sailing before, which you may have seen in much earlier videos, both sort of transatlantic and around the Cairns stuff, and I have done about 1,500, I'm going to say, miles in this boat, maybe getting on for 2,000 miles this season. So I've done a decent amount of mileage on it now. I've gotten up to speed, I think, on the boat, but having the new sails on this boat is going to be a massive game changer for next season. Now, I have one race left this season. Unfortunately, the last race I was planning to do was cancelled because of too much wind, so I've only got the one race left in 2025, but I'm hoping I can get a couple more sails in just for fun and just for practice before this boat comes out of the water for the next tranche of works that are going to be undertaken over this winter. And my plan is to get it back in the water early in 2026 so I can get out and do some more training so that I can hit the ground running, or hit the water sailing, as fast as I can at the start of next year's solo racing calendar. Now, before I put the new mainsail on, obviously I've got to take the old one off, so I'm going to get cracking on that because I need to swap the sliders over, because I've got a Top-Spec Marine low friction main track on here, so I need to swap the sliders over from the old sail to the new sail. And once I've done that, I'll get it on the boom, and then I'll be able to show you some of the features of my very fancy new sail. I really hope you enjoy my videos. If this is maybe the second or third or perhaps the fourth or fifth video that you've seen on refit and sail, there's one small thing that you could do for me which would really be appreciated. That's to hit that subscribe button and to press the thumbs up button down below. Both of those really do help support the show and massively help grow this channel. If you do those things, I'd really, really appreciate it. There we go, folks. First time out of the bag since I took delivery of it yesterday evening. It's now the afternoon of Friday, and I did some work this morning thinking I'm going to get this job done so I can go and play with my boat and have a look at my new sail. It was very hard to control my excitement, because if anyone out there knows me, you'll know that whilst I like my boats to look nice, the most important thing for me is how well they sail and how well set up they are, and having old sails has really been a total pain for me this year, because I know the boat is going to go so much better with sails that are fresh off the cutting room floor, with a bit of modern design and some much more modern materials. So this is a carbon aramid sail. I'll talk to you about its construction in a bit more detail once it's on the sail, but just to point out a few things. Obviously it's black. I had the option of black, grey or white. I've gone for black just because I like black and orange, and so one of the things that has yet to be done on this sail is it doesn't actually have any sail numbers yet or camber stripes on it yet. I'm going to get them painted on. Normally they're stick on, but I'm going to get them painted on, along with some decals and just some branding that's going to go on the mainsail and the jib. A few things to point out, some really nice touches. Obviously the headboard is here, standard headboard. In terms of its overall size, it is a full height mainsail, but I did want to reduce the size of the mainsail slightly, so it's actually shorter in the foot. It has a standard roach profile on it, but I've taken about 250 to 300 millimeters out of the length of the foot, because it's more efficient to have a high aspect sail. So if you're going to reduce the amount of sail area you've got, so you're better off reducing it out of the foot and still having a full height mainsail. So that is that. It's got some really nice touches on it, as well as being a carbon aramid sail. There are some elements of Kevlar in it, so these bits of webbing here are black Kevlar. That's why they're not quite as black as the rest of the sail, because it has to be dyed, I guess, and dyeing Kevlar may not be as successful as dyeing other materials. So that webbing is there. It's got a full length top batten here with a Selden batten box there, which you can tension by pushing the batten in and out using this thing here. On the reefing lines, rather than having eyes, which you would normally have, I have webbing, because I always reef the boat with the sail on the port side and it hooked on the starboard side, because typically I try and reef the mainsail when I'm on starboard tack, and it just makes it slightly easier. So all these webbing loops for the reefing eyes are on the starboard side to make it easier when I am putting a reef in. So we've got a third reef, very, very deep reef to meet the needs of racing regs, so that I don't have to carry a trysail. There's the second reef. No, it's not. That's the first reef, second reef, and there's a third reef somewhere up here. That's the third reef there. What else have we got in terms of reefing points at the back? We've got low friction eyes that are sewn into the sail. So if I pull it forward, you'll see at the back here, rather than having eyes in the sail, I have, again, Kevlar webbing onto the sail, and then I've got a low friction ring, and to take as much weight out of the sail as possible. These are titanium, these are not aluminium, so titanium low friction eyes for all my reefing lines. The only bit of stainless steel on it is in the headboard, which are the bits for the headboard, and the ring here at the foot for the outhaul. So I'm going to go and put all the slides on, and then we'll talk about the sail a little bit more, hopefully once it's on the boom. There is the sail in place, and I am very, very excited to go and take that out for a trip. Maybe tomorrow, if not tomorrow, definitely Sunday. I am starting to run out of time, unfortunately, today to play with it anymore, but I'm going to probably stick the reefing lines in and then pack it away, and I'll come back tomorrow and tell you a bit more about the excitement that is involved in designing and having built a very, very lovely sail. Obviously there's virtually no wind at the moment, there's no pressure in it at all, but I can kind of see the shape of it with what little wind there is. Lovely and flat, and lots of obviously creases in it. but that's from storage, and just because nothing is tensioned, I've just kind of pulled it hand tight at the moment. I'm very, very excited to get this out on the water. That's very nice. Good news, folks, there is some wind. It is Sunday now. I put the sail on Friday when there was virtually no wind. There was virtually no wind on Saturday, which is sod's law when you've got a new sail you want to try out. But finally, I've got a nice sort of 5 to 8 knots of breeze today. Not a lot, but enough to go sailing in and actually try out my sail. So before I tell you a little bit more about this sail, I'm going to go stick a head sail on, get the boat ready to go to sea, put the kettle on, make a cup of tea, and then we'll go out and see what this new sail can do on the water. Right, the boat is ready to go virtually, but I'm drinking what's left of my cup of tea, so I thought I'd quickly talk a little bit more about this sail and sails in general, and how we go about normally ordering sails on the route that I took, which is slightly unorthodox, but all done in an effort to, one, save some money because I am running this boat on a relatively small budget and trying to spend as wisely as I can, and two, because I wanted to be involved in the sail building process as much as possible. Although do bear in mind, I'm not a sail maker, I am not an expert on these matters. But let's go back a little bit in history. Where did sails come from? So back in the 1940s and 1950s, sails were actually made out of cotton, and they were very, very stretchy. I remember my dad saying when he started sailing out of this very harbour, in fact, he used to have cotton sails. But then the big revolution came when Terraline came in. Now, the brand name that most people know for Terraline is Dacron. It is a polyester material which was woven into sailcloth, and yes, I know there's no GPS. So that Dacron or Terraline sailcloth was very, very, very low stretch compared to the cotton sails that were before it. Now, unfortunately, obviously Dacron still does stretch. It only has a certain lifespan. It was very, very popular and still is popular as a cruising sail material, but things have moved on. And through the 70s and the 80s, laminate sails became much, much more common, and the technology of laminate sails were improved as time went forward. Now, when I'm talking about laminate sails, generally speaking, in the early days, there were two films of mylar or something very, very similar to that, with strings in that mylar sandwich to provide the strength. And normally those sails would be made in such a way that there would be an orientation of those fibres that meant that in one direction the sail material was much stronger than it would be in the other direction. So what that meant was you ended up with tri-radial cut sails to have the strongest, least stretchy direction of the sail material in the maximum load path of the sail. So as things moved on, of course, people started using computers, and things like computational fluid dynamics and FEA, so that's finite element analysis, started coming into play, and these really grew through the 90s, the noughties, and are extensively used today, particularly on high-end race boats. Now, what FEA does is finite element analysis looks at how strong something is within a computer model and works out where the weak points are, where it's going to break first, or conversely, how light you can make something to stand up to a certain amount of wind strength or abuse. CFD is more about how the wind goes across a foil, a sail, and how the two things kind of interact as the boat goes forward. So those two technologies have massively improved sail design over the years, and the models that are used become increasingly complex as computing power has become much more easily accessible to the sail makers. In terms of fibres that were used, so back in the 70s and the 80s, Kevlar was probably one of the most commonly used fabrics, and in fact it is still used in some places today. I talked about the fact that I've got Kevlar webbing on my sail up here on the strong points needed for the reefing lines, and that's a really good use for Kevlar, but it isn't used so much now these days in the sail material itself because other materials have come along which are better, such as carbon, Technora and other aramids that are actually built into this sail now. What North and some other sail makers have done, have pioneered the use of using a mould to make a sail almost in one piece or in panels, and what they end up doing is they use a computer model to design the sail so that they can lay the strings of carbon or other aramids into that mould exactly where they need to be. So radiating out from the luff, the leech and the head of the sail, you've got these carbon strands that come out and then go back into the other corner of the sail. And of course, where you have reefing points, and in my case I've got 3 reefs, there are additional threads of carbon that are built in between the luff and the leech of the tack and the clew for each reefing point as well. So that all adds to the structure of the sail, so that when it's fully up or when it's partially reefed, the sail is going to be strong enough to withstand the pressures that are going to be put on the sail. Quite hard to describe. It'd be much better if I had a picture that I could draw, but I haven't got any pens and paper here at the moment. So that is effectively how modern high-end sails are made, and that's how this is made. So the skins or the panels for my sail were actually made out in Italy by a company called Powerplast. Now a lot of sail makers, when they're making high-end sails, use Powerplast out in Italy, and there are other similar companies that make similar sort of things, but what they do is they will manufacture panels to a design that is sent to them, and those panels, for example in my sail I've got 4 panels I think that make up my mainsail. The load class of the strings between the panels all match up, so the panels are made, they're cut out back in the UK, they're glued together, finished off around the corners, put reefing points in, and then delivered to the client, which in this case was me. So I had these sails designed by an independent sail designer, a chap called Daryl. He came on the boat, did all the measurements necessary of the rig, the sail and what have you, and between us we discussed how I wanted to use the boat, what sort of conditions I'm likely to be using it, how many crew I'm going to use and all that sort of good stuff. And that's why we came up with the option of reducing the size of the mainsail, which was always on my mind, and I was going to reduce it from the head down, but he said no, actually you're far better off reducing it along the foot of the sail and still have a very high aspect ratio sail. So that is what I have got. And so what he's done is he's put the jib and the main into his computer, created a 3-dimensional model. On that, all the strings are put in on the sail, all the carbon and the aramid strings that make up the structure and the strength of the sail, and then that design is sent off to Powerplast over in Italy. They produce the panel, it's been sent back, and then the sail has actually been built by a very good friend of mine called Sean. He's a chap that I've known for a number of years, owns a Contessa, makes some very, very nice sail, used to run a sail loft in a previous life, and he has a sail loft effectively in his back garden, and so he has built my sail for me at a very reasonable price, which is very, very nice of him. And I've ended up basically with an absolutely top spec carbon racing sail for much less than it would cost if I went to one of the other sail makers that are on the high street, I was going to say, but one of the sail makers that I have perhaps used in the past. Now my jib has not yet been made and this sail is not yet completed, but I'm very impatient to go out and play with my new sail, so I've stuck it on the boat already. What's left to finish off on this? Well, it doesn't have any sail numbers on it, although they've been marked on, and it doesn't have any camber stripes on it. That's pretty much all it needs to finish it off, but I'm not going to get those put on until I've got the jib, because I'm actually going to get them painted on. So I'm using a company called Ocean Art to paint on the numbers and the draft strips, because they're also going to be doing some branding on the sail for me. The other thing is I also want to think about protection. My jib, when it arrives, is going to be a furling jib. It's got vertical battens in it so that I can furl it up much like I do with that sail up there. I do that because I race solo. Ideally, you wouldn't have a furling jib on a race boat, but for solo sailing it makes life so much easier and less stressful when you're putting kites up and down and what have you. You can just pull the string and furl up the genoa. But because that sail is going to be sitting on my furling system, it needs a degree of protection, and I absolutely hate, from a performance perspective, having a UV, sewn-on UV strip as protection to the sail when it's on the furler. So I'm actually going to be going for a paint-on UV strip on my jib that is going to protect it from harmful UV whilst it's on the furler. Obviously, if I'm going away for a long period and I'm leaving the boat, I will take the sail down, but whilst it's up there, I do need to protect it from UV because it doesn't have a boom cover like this does. So I'm going to have Ocean flexible coatings to put a UV protective strip on that jib. They're also going to do the numbers, they're also going to do the branding, and by having a painted on number, that also saves a little bit of weight over having stick-on numbers and all that sort of stuff. It also means I can have pretty much any colour I like, and because I like black and orange, guess what colour my sails are going to be. In fact, I really like the fact that my old jib is bright orange because it makes the boat super visible, but I can't get a whole sail in orange. That's enough talking. My coffee has in fact now gone cold, so it's time for me to put my sailing clothes on, life jacket on, and get out of here and do some sailing and try out this new mainsail. Well folks, we are out. As you can see, the sails are up and looking pretty nice actually. There's easterly today, so I've had to kind of sail away from Portsmouth to get out into free air. I'm going to go out past that fort over there and then get properly upwind. There's about 12 to 14 knots of breeze at the moment. I'm already noticing, whilst I'm not hard on the wind, I'm already noticing this boat is heeling over less because of the efficiency of that mainsail. It's much flatter, it's far less stretched, obviously, than the old one that had done 20 years of service. To be honest with you, I couldn't ask for better weather for testing it out. 6 to 8 knots, which was forecast, would have been a little bit on the light side really to test the sail, and this means that once I get out and start heading upwind, I'll have some proper breeze to play with, but more importantly, I can put reefs in and out and things like that just to check all the reefing kind of points look about right, and the sail sets nicely when reefed as well as fully up. If I get in close, you may just about be able to see the fibres that are within the laminate there. This is a filmless laminate, so it just has like a taffeta layer on both sides, then it has glue, and then it has the fibres, which are the load carrying fibres within the sail. It may or may not be possible to see that on camera. I guess I'll find out in the edit, but it is a lovely shape. I think I've possibly got slightly too much tension, or compression I should say, in the top batten up there, because the very forward end of it is very bent, so I might play with that once the sail is back down, just to reduce a bit of tension. That, or I need a slightly stiffer top batten, but we will see. We look to the left there, we're just passing one of the Solent forts. That's out the eastern end of the Solent. That one's pretty much derelict, but there's another one which is back there. You may or may not be able to see it. That has a hotel on it, and you can get like a trip out there for the weekend, or you can go out and have your Sunday lunch in the restaurant on the fort. I've not done that yet, but it'd be a nice thing to do. Now we've just sailed into the lee of the fort here, so the wind has dropped, but it'll be back very soon. And I can see a very large container ship that has to come in this gap as well, just over there. So I'm going to harden up onto the wind, see how the boat feels. Very nice. It looks so good. Honestly, for me, this is like Christmas and birthday all together. There's nothing I like more than playing with new sails. They look absolutely lovely. Well, I say they. This one, I can't wait to get the jib. Come on, Sean, get it built. I want to play with my new sails. Oh. So we got 13.5 knots of true wind. So with the apparent, we're probably, you know, up to 16, 17 knots. And normally I would be reefing right now. Now we have got a fair amount of heel on, but that's because I've got everything really tightened down hard. So I just want to see how it performs. But yeah, looks amazing. Hard on the wind now, and I've put a bit more tension on the main halyard because I was getting a few wrinkles there. I'm not sure if the clutch slipped or if the halyard had stretched ever so slightly because it hasn't been used for a while, but this is an absolute joy to be out. The sail is going to look better when it's finished, when it's got numbers and canvas stripes and all that sort of stuff, because with the black sail it's harder to see the shape of the sail, the amount of depth you've got in the sail, luff to leach, particularly obviously on camera when it's probably overexposing the sky and underexposing the sail. But trust me, this feels really very special and very lovely. I just want to get that jib on now and go play with that. But I'm not kind of ignoring the speeds at the moment because the boat's got a bit of a dirty bottom. More interested in kind of angle that I can get to windward. I'm sailing on 40 degrees, 39, 40 degrees apparent at the moment, which is quite a nice, not too tight beating kind of angle. I can go higher, but I lose a little bit of speed. But at the moment, I'm getting a bit of backwinding on the main, which is because the leech on that old jib is so hooked that it's really quite inefficient. So that's going to be a game changer when I have the two new sails working together without one kind of fighting the other. They'll be working in unison as my wind foils. You can see how black and orange go really nicely together, at least in my eyes they do, and that's why I want to get nice bright orange numbers on here. It also makes it super visible. One of the things with racing regs you have to comply with is your sail numbers must be visible from some distance away and clearly visible, and a lot of sail makers or perhaps owners seem to take a bit of a liberty with that, and you quite often see black sails with dark blue numbers, and it's really hard sometimes, particularly in poor visibility, to pick out a sail number. I'm not sure if the owners or the sail makers do that on purpose so that if you're caught doing something naughty, it's harder to identify which boat you are. I'm not going to comment on that, but I think from a safety point of view, particularly because I race solo and I race a bit offshore more than inshore, although a mixture is obviously nice, being visible and being identifiable for me as a safety thing is really, really important. So I'm looking forward to getting my jib, getting everything numbered up, camber striped up, a bit of maybe refit and sail stuff on the mainsail I'm thinking about, and it's going to look very nice. Well, I've just done a bit of slow downwind sailing, which allowed me to drink coffee and eat my lunch. But I'm now back on the wind, starboard tack this time. Really just keep looking at this sail and feeling very, very pleased to have it. But what I want to do next is chuck at least one, if not two reefs in, just to have a play with how it's going to look. So I'm going to do that now, and you can tell me if I'm doing it all wrong, but my process for sticking a reef in when I'm solo is just sail the boat on the jib and release the main, release the halyard, go forward, clip it on at the gooseneck, tension the halyard, and then pull in the reefing line at the back of the boat. So I do need to go on deck, but it's no biggie. There you go, folks, reef 1 in, no issues at all. It's all working nicely. I'm going to have to remark on the boom where I want my reefing lines, because if this line here is too far forward, you can't tension the foot of the sail. If it's too far back, it's not very efficient. So I had to pull this forward to the right position so the line goes up and then straight back. So get a marker pen out in a minute and write on the boom where that needs to be. And ultimately I might put some little eyes on the boom extrusion itself just to hold it in that position so it doesn't move whilst I'm sailing, and I don't have to mess about with relocating this to the ideal place when I want to put my reefs in. So I might put reef 2 in now and then have a little bit of a sail around, and then it's unfortunately going to be going back home time. But I'm very pleased with how this is going. If you can't already tell, I'm a very happy man. Well folks, it's time to head in now. I've had a really nice sail, just had a little float about, a bit of tacking, bit of jibing, just generally kind of playing with the sail actually, just to kind of look at what the telltales are telling me whilst I trim it in and out at different points of sail. And it's kind of doing everything it should do, which is excellent news. So, so thank you very much for watching. There will be a bit more about sails in a second video, but I just was well, too excited not to share the news that I have a mainsail, even if it's not 100% there. It's like 99% there. And when the jib turns up, we'll talk about that. We'll go out again, hopefully get a bit of time on the water again, and then I will have my sail plan sorted for next year when I start racing again. As I said, I've got one more race this season, and I may or may not use this sail for this race. It's just like the end of season solo race. Technically I probably shouldn't, because my IRC rating is for my other main, but as this is smaller than my other main, effectively I'm just handicapping myself. So yeah, I don't know, I might have to ask the race committee if they're happy for me to use a different main than is on my certificate, because I'm not going to go and get a new certificate just for one race. If they want to protest me out, then they can protest me out of the race. We'll see what happens. But anyway, thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you to those of you that support the show with your donations to Refit and Sail. They make a massive difference and keep the lights on here. They pay for software, they pay for storage, they pay for cameras and microphones and all that sort of good stuff. So stay tuned. I will see you again soon. Thanks very much. Bye for now.